Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's late night happy hour. Brian Kamenetzky and Andy Kamenetzky, joined shortly by Kirk Morrison. As of course he hosts the Rams pre and post game, but like he kind of hosts everything. Like if you look him up, like Kirk is all over the place. Doing college football broadcasts, pro football stuff, SiriusXM radio. He is all over the place, and he will be joining us momentarily to look back a little bit at what we saw this weekend with the Rams and obviously look ahead to what we're going to see this weekend with the Rams in Green Bay. So we'll get there. But in the meantime, you said it yourself, Andy. The Lakers broke the Houston Rockets. Like they have broken the franchise once known as the Houston Rockets.
And to be clear, this is not just I'm not just referencing the 117-100 win, which really wasn't even that close tonight in Houston.
No. They were up by 20 at the end of the first quarter, I think.
No, Brian.
No,
they were
21.
up by 25. They were up by 25 in the first quarter. That is hard to do.
Yeah,
like
a 21 at the end of it, Andy. Don't make it seem like it was a bigger deal.
Like a 25-point spread, that's big, period. But getting that big of a spread by the end of a first quarter,
it's not.
That's really, really hard. But it's not just the result of tonight. It is the result of the last game where they beat the crap out of the Rockets, and then the playoffs where they completely beat the crap out of the Rockets. Unless you're going to give that much credit to the absence of Daniel House, they just destroyed him
again. And it is the common denominator. You're right. Through all of these things is they haven't done this with Daniel House.
That is, yeah. And tonight, excuse me, afterwards, James Harden was at the podium, and let me see if I can find the exact quote, but basically said, I'm out of here. Reading from Tim McMahon, covers the Rockets and all the Texas teams for ESPN. James Harden says, the Rockets are, quote, just not good enough. Ellipsis, I love this city. I literally have done everything I can.
Literally have done everything.
This situation is crazy. It's something I don't think can be fixed. And then he just walked away from the podium, didn't take any more questions. And it's pretty clear that, as if we didn't know anyway, he wants out. Also, by the way, John Wall, Kelly Iko, our buddy who covers the Rockets for The Athletic, interesting quote from him. John Wall, when you have certain guys that don't want to buy in, it's hard. Again, could be talking about Daniel House.
You made the point, Andy, that he left the podium without taking questions. Do we know for sure anybody had any?
You know who, by the way, I'll tell you who never did something like that over the course of his career? Kirk Morrison. Kirk Morrison never did that when he was in the NFL. Kirk Morrison was a professional. Right. He wouldn't bail on his team, but he certainly wouldn't bail on his team in that type of,
when you had your press conferences, Kirk, where you said that your teammates weren't good enough and that you wanted out, you stayed and took questions after that, correct?
I mean, you're supposed to, right? Right? Isn't I'm for some reason when you guys speak of that, I think of remember Dwight Howard's press conference with that
Stan Van Gundy?
Yeah. And Stan Van comes in there. He's giving a conference talking about Dwight Howard, and then Dwight comes in and like gives him a hug. Like, oh, what's up? Like, yeah, I'm actually talking about you right now. How you want to fire me as your head coach?
Yeah, and Dwight starts talking about it as all these crazy rumors, not knowing Stan Van Gundy had actually confirmed them.
Correct.
Like when Kirk used to throw his teammates under the bus at the podium, he would say this stuff and then say, "Look, if you have any questions specifically about who I mean and why they suck, I'm here." Just one at a time, please. We're not animals.
How you been, man?
I've been good, man. How you guys doing?
Very good.
Good.
I mean, have you seen something like that where a guy just, we're not good enough and my teammates suck and I kind of want and I really do want to leave. Like there's no confusion. I want out. Like, how do you walk back into a locker room after that?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I know I've been on some teams when I was with the Raiders, I remember 2006, we went 2-14. That was probably the hardest thing that I've had to deal with as a professional. You only win 2 games out of 16 tries, fellas. That's very difficult.
Yeah.
But we knew that it was more of the coaching philosophy than it was the players. I think we realized how hard it is to get to the professional level, right? Coming through the high school, through college ranks, it's going to be tough to get to the NFL. And so it's like when I see bad teams in the NFL, right? People are like, oh man, those guys are just bad. Like, I don't know if it's bad teams. Like I just say, it's just sometimes it's a lot of just bad coaching. And we've seen that before. Maybe like this past year with like the Jets. Like the Jets weren't a bad team. They just didn't believe in what the coaching staff was preaching. That's one of the reasons why they don't have a coaching staff right now currently, because I thought their players were actually pretty good.
Like with a good coaching staff, how many games did the Jets win this year?
I think they're at least a 6 to 7 win team, right?
Okay.
I mean, people, not like terribly. I mean, wouldn't with these drastic change, but I still think that they're win.
No, that's a big difference. That's a big difference.
Because honestly, coaching can get you, 6 to 10 wins, right? And then players are what put you over the top, right? Kansas City has the mix of both, right? I'm not surprised why the Kansas City Chiefs went 15-1, I believe, right? 15-1, 14-2, I forget. I think 14-2. That's right. They lost week 17, which didn't matter for them. But you think about it, like they had a coaching staff that returned after winning a Super Bowl. That was number one. And then they have the best quarterback probably in the NFL currently in terms of future and all around talent. And they got good players. So for me, that like when you see talent and coaching, yes, that's going to get you over the top. Sometimes like Sean McVay, no matter what, if we're talking Rams only, they'll never be a 6-10 type of team. They're too well coached to be 6-10. They'll always be right either at 500 or above 500.
That's interesting you say that, Kirk, because there's a lot of other sports, the NBA in particular, but I think also people talk about this with baseball, where they'll say ultimately it's talent that's going to be that great separator, and then the coach would put you over the top. Correct. As opposed to the way you're describing this, where it's actually in the NFL, coaching can really lay that foundation, then the talent puts you over the top.
Yeah.
What makes it more specifically that way in the NFL?
I think what makes it that is just honestly, coaching is really a belief in a system, right? Everybody has to, it's 11 equal parts. Everybody has to do their job, right? If you're all doing your job, then I think that's the easy part. And coaching sometimes puts guys in the right spot. I think maybe a basketball reference would be like the Spurs, right? And the Spurs were always a team that didn't have weren't the most talented team. Let's be honest. They would have a couple key guys, but not the most talented team. But yet,
pretty good. I mean, they had, Tim Duncan and Manu and those guys, and they weren't happy.
But it was like 2 or 3 of your stars, and you know what I mean. You have guys around them, but it was all part of a system. It was part of the scheme. It was part of everybody believing in what's going on. And I think when you have that common denominator, coaches, to me, like they know how to get the most out of their players. The best coaches, right? They're usually the best motivators too. Like there are certain guys who I wanted to always be coached by, right? Growing up, I was a big, Bill Parcells fan, Bill Cowher. Like those are the types of coaches I'm like, man, I would love to play for those because I know what kind of motivators they are. That it wasn't about just you as a player. They wanted to motivate the group, make sure that everybody's playing for the common good. And honestly, once you have that as a coaching staff, I think the rest is kind of easy in terms of X's and O's.
So what happened? Like we have granted LA asked the question right now about Doug Pederson, who won a Super Bowl 2 years ago, and now he's out. What happened there? Other than Carson Wentz seems to have forgotten how to play quarterback.
Yeah, the economics of the NFL went out again, right? When you talk about the economics of the NFL, when you owe a guy like Carson Wentz $60+ million or more over the next couple seasons, guaranteed, it's either the coach or the player. And in economics of NFL, owners, billionaires, regardless, billionaire owners are they're not giving away $65 million. Like, no, we'd rather give away the coach and start over and figure it out from there. So kind of drew his line in the sand a little bit. And I think that's why Philadelphia had to go a different way, because there was no way that they're getting out of that contract. So now what do? You bring in a new head coach and you set up what I got my air quotes up here, right, for a competition at quarterback, right? Yeah. So 2021 is going to be about a competition in Philadelphia between Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts, right? That's the only way that you can spin it. Because look, if you're Carson Wentz's agent, he wants to be out of there. It's like, hey, well, look, how about we fire the head coach? We bring in a new head coach and now a new system, new scheme, and he can battle it out. So,
I mean, is it a competition between him and Jalen Hurts to see who can find the facility? Because if Jalen Hurts finds it, he wins.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how could you possibly look at what Jalen Hurts did? Like, what Jalen Hurts did is, I think, more impressive than anything we've seen from Carson Wentz. Like, even when Carson Wentz was at his best, I think Jalen Hurts was more impressive.
Yeah, Jalen. I'm just thinking, if I was a player on the Philadelphia Eagles, what I saw from Jalen, I was like, that dude looks different than what was out there. You know what I'm saying? Like Jalen looks like what the new quarterback of the NFL looks like. And Carson Wentz, it's safe to say that we've been trying to see the Carson Wentz of 2017, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even
we're waiting to get that performance back, right?
Like, to clarify, the Nathan Mark on the chat is saying that Wentz would have won MVP if he wasn't injured in that Rams game, because he's from New Zealand.
Right.
Like, I'm not even saying that Wentz is terrible. I mean, he's had a couple bad years, but at his best, Wentz wasn't a terrible quarterback. I'm just saying what we've seen Jalen Hurts do, I think it's just better.
Correct. It's been better, but I think we're still trying to get back to that 20, but we're trying to get back to that 2017, right? We're trying to get back to that 2017 Wentz, and we just have not seen it. Like, everybody, he was supposed to be MVP and this and that. Well, even had he won the MVP, guys, right? We're still trying to get back, or we're still trying to see that Carson Wentz again, which we haven't seen the last two seasons. And so now it has to start all over. And the people of Philadelphia are like, well, the guy, Jalen Hurts, looks a little better now. Like, why not we go with this guy? Because in this league, it's what have you done for me lately?
Exactly.
Yeah. It is not like, oh, well, 2017, he was MVP candidate. Yeah, boy, in 2020, he stunk. Right. So
this is one of these things, because, like, obviously, I mean, I played football in high school. You know, I grew up watching it, but I do not know football in the way that you know football, in the way that professionals know this and do this. But there are, like, that thing where you just kind of you turn on the TV, and it's like as if you never have seen the sport before and go, well, that guy's doing something a little different. Like, that's a real thing. I mean, you look around the league, you know, Justin Herbert, who doesn't run around all over the field, but, you know, is mobile, but, you know, stands there and has like an arm and does so. You're like, okay, that guy looks a little different. Like, this is a real thing. It's not the be all end all metric, obviously, but, like, that makes a difference. Like, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think the best test for a player is the eyeball test, obviously. I know we live in a fantasy football world, right? And so we all have fantasy teams, right?
That's the most important football, by the way, Kirk. Let's be honest about this.
Well, I didn't make the playoffs, Andy, so don't worry about me, right? Like, just don't even talk to me when it comes to fantasy this year. This was probably the worst year I've had in fantasy, okay? But you think about it, in a fantasy football world, that's what we're like, oh my God, he had all this many points and this many yards, and he threw for this many touchdowns. But when you watch it in a full game, a full live setting, you're like, this guy didn't do anything in the first half, and he had a bunch of garbage yards in the second half when his team was down by 3 points, because he had actually 3 turnovers to start the game. And so that's why sometimes I always say, let's look at the totality. Do they pass the eyeball test first? And the eyeball test usually comes from teammates. Like, I've been there before, where I've been in the locker room and I've seen a guy get drafted. Okay. And I've seen a guy get drafted after him, and they both go out there, and I'm like, the guy who got drafted after looks better than the guy we drafted ahead of him. So why are we playing the guy ahead of him? You get what I mean? It's like it doesn't look right. So you have to not only let your teammates see it first, but once you got that belief, you're good to go.
John Witherspoon wants to know, is that Matt Nagy on the top right? No, it is not. But if you'd like to come on the show, he's more than welcome. Just to make it clear.
You said something, Kirk, that is a perfect segue for people like me who people who watch this show know have been a little Goff skeptical. You talked about Carson Wentz and you know, everybody's kind of looking back to that Carson Wentz of 2017. To some degree, I feel like we're in that space right now a little bit with Jared Goff. And let's even setting the thumb aside for a minute. Like, we're in that space where we're kind of looking back to what he was in the Super Bowl season, maybe skipping over some things from last year and a lot of things from this year. You know, Wentz has done Goff a favor, I think, a little bit by just falling apart. So we don't notice some of these things. But where is Jared Goff in this sort of growth and development equation?
Wow, it's a great question, man. Great question. And obviously, I guess this can be a long-winded answer because we're up. Go ahead, we're good. Yeah. We got time to kill, right? But okay, I'll go back to 2015 because 2015, I believe, was the Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota draft, right? Where Tampa Bay went 1 and then Tennessee Titans went 2. They drafted 2 of these quarterbacks, and remember how they were supposed to be in the league 15 plus years. They're going to be starters for a long time. And, you know, Tampa Bay was finally found their quarterback. Same with Tennessee with Mariota. And 3 years into it, you kind of had that thing going like, this may not be the long-term option, right? And so, you know, with Jameis Winston, they didn't offer these guys the long-term contract. They gave them the 5th-year options, but they didn't give them necessarily that contract or that reward of the contract that you usually get for a guy who's number 1 or number 2. So I kind of prefaced that by starting it off saying that Tampa Bay and Tennessee both got out of those contracts and went elsewhere, right? Tennessee went with Tannehill. Okay, and we all know that Tampa Bay went with Tom Brady, right? And both of those teams made the playoffs. And then you look at the other side of it, because in 2016, the Rams took Jared Goff and the Eagles took Carson Wentz. So you go 1 and 2 in those situations. We were so hungry. Like, I think the Rams and the Eagles were so hungry to say, hey, we got the quarterback right. 3 years in, let's give them the big deal. Let's give them the big deal. And we're like, okay, but you didn't have to do that. Why did you do that? And I think it's also the landscape of the NFL, looking at Kirk Cousins, looking at some of these other guys like Dak Prescott. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to do what? Like, you're going to, the price tag is going to get higher and higher. So let's do it now. So this is like the dilemma that the Rams and the Eagles were in, more specifically the Rams. So they reward Jared Goff. And then what happens? Do I think that they're comfortable with the contract right now?
Funny, that's not what Brian asked. But go on, Kirk.
No.
Is that a hypothetical? So if you're not asking rhetorically, I'll answer. I'll say no. No, they are not.
Yeah, are they comfortable there? Like, because you're asking where is Jared Goff, and I'm asking, do you think that the Rams are comfortable with where he's at right now? I would say he's not had the season that we've had, that he's played before, right? A couple seasons ago, he's played well. It's not like he's been that bad. But what happens is criticism is allowed when you're making the top tier dollar in the NFL, because I've always learned that when you make more, you have to do more. Okay. And has Jared Goff done more with the talent around him? Has he done more or has he done less since he's been rewarded the contract? Right? When you get those big contracts, you're supposed to elevate your roster. Has he elevated his roster? Right? And this is just an honest criticism. This is not saying Jared Goff is bad. I'm saying I think he's a decent quarterback, good quarterback, but does he elevate the roster, or does the roster just stay right where it's at? Where I look at Patrick Mahomes, right? You look at Deshaun Watson, we can honestly say that with the contract that those guys got, very similar into the money per year, have they elevated their roster? And you would say, yeah. I mean, you're seeing guys having Pro Bowl type seasons. I mean, Brandon Cooks had over 1,000 yards this year, I think, with Tennessee. So, I mean, I'm sorry, with Houston. Houston. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I've seen other guys uplift their roster, and with Jared Goff right now, it's kind of just tapered.
Yeah, you're getting at something, Kirk, that I've been a broken record about this in particular for the last couple of years, but I really think it doesn't get talked about enough in terms of where the Rams are at now and where the offense has been the last couple of years, but also by extension where Goff is. The guy, when the Rams were at their best, the guy that was elevating the offense more than anybody wasn't Goff. It was Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley was what made that offense special and what made them so impossible to stop. And I think also what made them so unique, because he was this incredible runner who was also incredible catching passes out of the backfield. He was also a really good pass blocker.
Correct.
So you could have him on the field literally for 4 downs if you were going to play 4 downs. So and guys like that are really unusual. And so much of what Sean McVay did was built around Gurley's skill set. And I think it made everybody, including Goff, better. And they've never come close to replacing what Gurley provided, which makes sense because at the time, Gurley was the best offensive player in the league. So that's in and of itself really.
For me, the issue there becomes, Kirk, that okay, Gurley's gone, and if you would want Goff to be able to step up and
of course, I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is, at his best, I don't think Goff was the guy that was elevating everybody to begin with, nor was he actually asked to. For a while at Goff's best, he wasn't even asked to be doing that. He was just supposed to be playing well.
No, Andy, I think that's a great point. And I think
Brian, it's a great point.
Well, my point was great too, and I already asked. Kirk said I asked.
It wasn't as great. Kirk didn't compliment.
But I think it's a great point that has to be said though. In 2020 was the first year that Jared Goff truly this was his offense. Like we forget that this was actually the first year without Todd Gurley, and the Rams did have success. A lot of it goes into, I think, Sean McVay realizing from 2019 that when you have only one guy in the backfield, it's very difficult if he's not at 100% or he's not that bell cow that you want. And you look at the team last year that won the division where they had 4 or 5 guys running out there. And I'm talking about the San Francisco 49ers. Remember, they had Tevin Coleman, Breida, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson. I mean, they kept rolling guys out there, and the offense kept rolling. A guy would get banged up, but here was one guy right behind him. And then you look at where the Rams were. Todd Gurley was not 100% last year, and the offense suffered. There was nobody behind him. There was no dynamic running back. So in this season, having those 3 guys, whether it was Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, and Malcolm Brown, you actually had 3 viable backs that ran the ball well. And so Goff just had to just be right after that, but he kept turning the ball over. My biggest concern with the Rams offense this year was this was also the first year without a legitimate speed burner at the wide receiver position under Sean McVay. Like, remember year 1, he had Sammy Watkins. Now, I don't care what Sammy Watkins did in terms of catching the football or not. I knew that if he was on the field, you better have a safety in the middle of the field because he will run past anybody. Okay, then they trade for Brandon Cooks the next 2 years. And we know Brandon Cooks, he's good at doing what? Running past people. So that guy was now traded in the offseason. And so sometimes you say, well, he was making too much money. It didn't help the cap. Those guys had a purpose within the offense because that's what the Rams were missing. Right. And that's one of the reasons why teams just really started to say, you know what? No one is going to run past us. We are going to play a ton of man-to-man and force Jared Goff to have to handle pressure, make some things happen off schedule, and that's just not where his skill set is truly at.
You have to ask a question like this, I think is indicative of the conversation we're having. I mean, Goff's thumb, not sure where it came out of. I give him a lot of credit for playing through it last week. It was clearly
Right.
not.
I want to say
really
this,
had
by
trouble
the way,
throwing the ball.
about Goff, because I think it's worth mentioning. It's something we've seen since his rookie year. Say what you will about his skills, whether he's regressing, whatever. That dude's tough. Jared Goff is legit.
He's a tough guy.
He's missed one game due to injury in 4.5 seasons.
Right.
Like he and we've seen, because he can't really move. He often gets clobbered.
We'll take a hit, but I don't know how much more his thumb can heal in a week. I don't know what Wolford's status is coming off that stinger, and Lord knows Sean McVay is not going to tell us between now and Saturday. But let's assume each guy is relatively healthy.
Right.
I'll ask two questions. Who would you start? But also, I think, just for the conversation we're having, that you have to ask the question, answer some of the questions that we were talking about with Jared Goff, because it shouldn't be a question.
Right.
But you factor in, it's supposed to be really effing cold in Green Bay this weekend, and Goff hasn't been a good cold weather quarterback when he has a thumb. So if you don't have,
I could not believe really quickly that McVay or
answer this question.
That sneak. Yeah. I could not believe they called that. I mean, putting aside the fact your quarterback just had pins put in his thumb, and you'd like not to see it in some scrum where it can get banged up, or people yank on. I mean, you've talked to us before about stuff that goes on in that scrum. It's ugly, but also too, this is not a guy who hangs onto the ball all that well when his thumb is 100%. Dick
Butkus would have bit that thumb off.
I'm just saying,
Kirk Morrison would have bit that thumb off.
Sean McVay was lost in the sauce, man. I mean, he was caught up in the moment, right? When you're caught up in the moment, when you're caught up in the moment, you're just like, all right, just do this, and you're like, oh, and after you're like, that was a bad idea. Right, you know what I mean?
Were you surprised they didn't have that Bortles wasn't active? I was shocked.
No, I wasn't shocked. I think that remember Blake Bortles was signed this week, so I don't know how many plays that you would have him go out there and run. I mean, knowing that you only get 46 men on a roster, right? And think about it. I thought it was good that they didn't activate him, because who would have thought Aaron Donald would have went down in the second half? But the Rams had enough depth along their defensive front that more guys got in, and they were able to go the whole second half without Aaron Donald, and yet they still created pressure on Russell Wilson. They still made it very difficult. But just think, if you had to take away one of those defensive linemen that activated a third quarterback who possibly wouldn't play, you know what I mean, who just got there this week. And I know he was there on the Rams last year, but he was an emergency guy if needed. But Goff's thumb had healed enough that, hey, emergency, we can put him in. We're going to need you to be a tough guy. And he showed that, man. He had to be a tough guy. I just don't know if that QB sneak was something that you should have been doing, Coach McVay. You can't be doing that. But
typically, I'm sorry, but typically, who is the 46? Where does the 46th guy play? Is it an extra defensive lineman? Is it an extra offensive lineman? And where is that? Who did they feel?
I even go a step further. So if we're talking just the Rams have a 42-man roster. Okay, so think about it. They have 42 guys between two positions. So I bring that up because it's a 46-man roster, but we know Jake McQuaid, Johnny Hecker, Matt Gay, and Simba Webster are your four specialists, okay? Those are your four specialists. So those guys are active on game day. Now, between your offense and your defense, you've got 42 players, right? And that's all you got. And so you think about having big Andrew Whitworth come back and possibly what the Rams had to go through with that. You know what I mean? Would Whitworth hold up? Now, do we dress an extra offensive lineman or do we not? How many offensive linemen do you go in? I mean, you start to do the breakdown. I mean, I think the Rams had, I want to say, two backs available. I think it was Cam Akers and Malcolm Brown. So you got two backs, two quarterbacks. That's four. How many receivers are you going to have active? You know what I mean? 5 or so. Now you're at 9, and then the offensive linemen, 2 tight ends. It is literally, I saw a head coach that I had in the NFL. I remember he had a meeting. We had a team meeting, and afterwards I came up to talk to him, and I saw just what that board looks like. There's a board in the head coach's office or the team meeting room or the head coach's team meeting room. And yeah, I mean, because you got to go off who's injured, who's not, possibility, who's 100%, who's not, who's questionable, who's doubtful. So sometimes it is a difficult position for teams to be in terms of who do you suit up. I mean, I'll put it like this. Tampa Bay last weekend in the wild card round made Ronald Jones active. Okay, he was on that 46-man active day roster. He hurts his quad in the pregame. Well, guess what? You're stuck with him. Yeah, you're stuck.
I was wondering why he wasn't playing, actually.
He injured the quad in pregame. So guess what? That's it. It's not like, okay, we want to take him off and put somebody else on. Like, nope.
That way.
Now you're playing with 45 guys on the active day roster for Tampa Bay.
I'm glad I asked you this because, I mean, I know, Rams Twitter, NFL Twitter was like, what the hell? Because if Goff breaks his thumb, like Johnny Hecker's your quarterback.
Right.
But this is why I asked the question.
Do you think when Wolford went down and Goff was initially struggling, Hecker was getting all up in McVay's ear like, I'm over here, coach. Come on, put me in, buddy.
He would have been handing that ball off. Trust me, he wouldn't have been doing more than that.
There wasn't a tiny part of you that wanted to just see what that would look like.
No, that would have been ugly. Trust me, I saw it earlier this season between the Denver Broncos and New Orleans Saints. It was I called it the Army-Navy game. Remember when Denver had Kendall Hinton started at running back?
Exactly.
That he managed to complete one pass was incredible. Like, that's an incredible feat.
I believe his cleats are going to the Hall of Fame for some just that moment. I mean, that's if 2020 was a football game, that was the one. New Orleans at Denver.
But we get back to the question though here. Like, so let's assuming Goff is healthy-ish, sort of his thumb's better but not perfect. And you have his track record. Correct. And you have Wolford, who is, better but not perfect with basically no track record.
Right.
And you could pick, who would you start?
Well, I honestly thought that Goff should have started last week.
Okay.
I'm still on the Goff train. I'm not getting off the train. Yeah, he's had a couple of bad games here and there, but this is still the guy that led you to the Super Bowl a couple seasons ago. I just love that Goff has been in those big moments. And the one thing that some teams or some people may have as a criticism for Goff, to me, is I love about the kid. You mentioned his toughness already, but sometimes I never know if Jared Goff is up or down. I mean, I don't know if he's thrown for 3 touchdowns or 3 interceptions. He keeps the same demeanor, right? So as frustrated as he may be,
3 interceptions.
But just think about it. Last week, I told people the Week 17 game for Jared Goff may have been the best point in his career, because for the first time he had to sit back and watch what it looks like, right? You guys ever done that before where you just kind of sit back and you just watch what it looks like? You know what I mean? Like, look, when you're trying to teach your kids with the at-home learning, right? Like I'm doing all these different things. And then one day I sat back and watched the teacher actually teach, and you sit of the pace that you have to use, right? The words that you have to use, right? Just how prepared that you have to be. And so it's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to try that next time. And so Jared Goff sat out Week 17, then was thrown into the game. He played probably one of his better games of the season. And why was that? He didn't throw an interception. He took care of the football. He looked smart. And then he made plays that he didn't in Week 16. Remember the one where he ran out to the side and he threw the interception to Jamal Adams in Week 16? Well, this time he said, you know what? I'm going to run and take off and get as many yards and get out of bounds. Then we saw him step up in the pocket, get up to the line of scrimmage, and decide to dump it off to Cam Akers, and they had the big play as well. Yeah. So I saw some growth, and with that growth, I think that McVay, it's hard to tell me that, okay, we're going to go back to Wolford. Like, no, you have to go with Goff this game. But that being said, I would love a package of plays for John Wolford. I would love to see him in a 3rd and short, 3rd and medium type situation. I love what obviously Jacoby Brissett is for the Indianapolis Colts. I love what Taysom Hill is for the New Orleans Saints. John Wolford can be that for the Rams, and I can trust that kid in a third and short, third and medium, or if Goff doesn't have it, hey, let's go to John Wolford because Goff's thumb is too stiff today in that 20-degree weather.
Is this a game? Because the Packers haven't scored under. I'm looking it up here. Under 30 points. They've been under 31 time in their last 7 games.
Mm-hmm.
You can go through all their offensive numbers. They're incredible. You do the opposite with the Rams, best defense and scoring. All these,
right.
Immovable object, irresistible force kind of things. Devontae Adams has more touchdown passes than the Rams have allowed this year.
Yeah,
which is a crazy stat.
Yeah, that's 18. I mean, that's ridiculous. By the way, Randy Moss has the record for most in the season, but Devontae Adams did that in 2 less games,
14 games. Yeah,
that's crazy.
If you're looking at this, obviously the offense, the Rams defense, which is the Green Bay offense, is obviously a big deal,
right?
Is it are we ignoring the other half of it though? Is it more about that side of it, or whether or not the Rams can actually put up enough points against Green Bay's defense?
Brian, I don't know, because if you would have told me the Rams would have put up 30 against the Seattle Seahawks last week, I would have laughed. I was like, no, this is going to be a game in the low 20s, right? And the Rams put up 30 plus points. It could be an offensive explosion. And can the Rams play that type of game? Yeah, it's in them, but do they want to? No, I don't think so. I've been burned too many times by going with, the high-scoring offense. Yeah, go with those guys. And then all of a sudden, that number one defense, they're number one for a reason, right? They go out and they play well. I go back to the Super Bowl a couple years with the Rams. If you would have told me that game would have went down to 13-3, I'm like, come on, please.
It's
the Rams
funny.
wouldn't score a touchdown. Like, you got to go.
Forget in that game that Tom Brady spent most of it not getting much going either. Correct. Like there's a lot of focus on the Rams, their lack of offense, and everything goes back to Goff, and fine, that's the burden of being a franchise quarterback. But Tom Brady spent 3/4 of that game basically struggling as much as Goff.
Correct.
Like that defense has been good for a few years, and especially this year, there have been question marks about a guy like Corey Littleton leaving, and then Brandon Staley never having this job before.
Right,
Kirk, man, they are one of the most disruptive. Just like when you watch them, what stands out in terms of the why that they're like this?
Man, it's I think the why for me is always look at the totality of everything first, right? So I look at the way the defense was built, because I look at the 2020 version compared to the 2019 version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the 2019 version under Wade Phillips, the day one starters, just to always like to remind people, the starters in 2019 were Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, Eric Weddle, Clay Matthews, Dante Fowler, Corey Littleton, Nickel Roby-Coleman was your nickelback. All those guys are gone.
Yeah.
They're not there. So you're replacing some big names, guys who are still making plays in this league, got some big time contracts. They're not there. And so the Rams' depth was tested, and they had to go out and believe in what they've done and how they've drafted. Now, here they go with Darius Williams, who had an outstanding year, who started opposite Jalen Ramsey. They made the Jalen Ramsey trade last year to be that star cornerback. They did that. Troy Hill was a guy who we all remember was just a college free agent they signed, and he was a special teamer. He ended up becoming, one of their best slot cornerbacks. Okay, and then you drafted 2 outstanding safeties out of college. Your 6th rounder, Jordan Fuller, becomes the best one who plays right away. And then you still got Terrell Burgess, who was injured, to go along with John Johnson. I'm sitting here going, okay, well, what about the linebacker position? You got to figure out the linebacker spot. Well, Micah Kaiser's been down for the last 6 weeks, and we haven't even talked about him. Now, he did make a play on special teams last week, but it's been the group of Kenny Young and Troy Reeder, right, of those guys making plays. And in that defensive front, I mean, let's be honest, this is a good comparison because you're asking me the why. And this is the why of the defense, Andy. and what makes Aaron Donald so special. What Aaron Donald does is what we expect from Jared Goff, to uplift the unit, to make everyone around you better. Aaron Donald on the field makes that defense better. He makes Sebastian Joseph Day better, Morgan Fox, right? Leonard Floyd was a cast-off, and now all of a sudden he's a 10-plus sack guy in the NFL because of Aaron Donald, okay? That's the why, is that they have two of the best players at the position in the NFL, hands down. Like that's two. And then you can start to like put guys around them. It's similar to the Lakers, to be honest. It's the greatest player in LeBron. You have the next player in Anthony Davis. You bring those guys together, and the guys around them just do their part. Do your part. And then there's guys who have stepped up and hungry to be out there. But when you got the confidence of the big brothers out there in the Twin Towers, like of Ramsey and Donald, I just got to do my job. And that's what these guys are doing.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, there are times you watch them and they remind me of like those Ravens teams with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. Just, beyond being great at stopping teams or whatever, there's that disruption. There's that chaos. Like they seem like they would be really, really difficult to try to scheme against. Like they seem, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, because there's stuff that's happening that I know you understand. It's actually really fun when I've been in the press box watching a game with you, like, and being able to actually say, "Hey, Kirk."
Everybody should be allowed to watch a game next to Kirk one time.
Yeah, I mean, it's great,
so much fun.
It is. I mean, Travis Rogers, who you co-host with, I watched Travis ask you questions. It's an awesome resource, but they seem just really unpredictable when they're out there. Like, it doesn't seem like you can anticipate everything they do.
To Andy's point, I saw a breakdown where they put Donald at left end and right end exactly 75 times on each side. He's played left tackle and right tackle. Like the splits are within like one or two. It's like he's never in the same place like this for the same amount of time.
Right. Well, it's because they have not only faith in the system, but it's Brandon Staley understanding that he can affect the way offenses block Aaron Donald and who gets the free guy, right? So if we're talking from a defensive line standpoint, everybody just wants to get the one-on-one. That's all it is. Everybody just wants to get one-on-one, because in the NFL, you're supposed to beat one-on-one. That's what you get paid to do. Now, double teamed and chip blocks, hey, look, that's, grown men can beat that. Like, that's Aaron Donald. But when you have him line up on one side, it creates opportunity for others. And so that's why you're starting to see the pressure come, because if Aaron doesn't get there, we're seeing the other guys get there. We're seeing the other guys make plays.
There was a game a few weeks ago. I don't remember exactly who they played, but Brockers made a really good play. He had to work pretty hard against the guy that was blocking him. Then he ended up looping back around and he gets a sack. Right. And it was awesome effort by Brockers, who I think is actually a pretty underrated part of the defense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But then I saw on the replay, I'm like, oh, okay. There were three guys on Aaron Donald. Yeah. Like, I'm not trying to take away anything Brockers did, because again, he won his matchup. He had to work his ass off. But it is helpful when three guys are occupying one of your teammates.
I think too, you have that, but then you also have, when I talk about confidence and belief, like last week kind of sums up where the Rams defense is. And it was the play by Darius Williams.
Thank you. Go ahead.
It was the interception by Darius Williams on a screen pass. That did not happen in 2020 in the NFL, by the way. Yeah.
800 wide receiver screens were run this year across the league. None of them were intercepted.
That is a guy who did his homework. That is a guy who is confident. Those plays don't happen in the NFL. They don't, because a lot of guys are fearful of what may happen. But he read it, he saw it, picked it off, and it was a touchdown. And that changed the tide of the game too for the Rams. But it goes back to the confidence that the whole group is playing with right now.
Is that a coaching thing? Because like I said, like I think I picked this up on the Ringer, but they It might be that or The Athletic, one of the two, and I apologize for not remembering. But Seattle had run that play twice this season. Twice. Right. So it's like, that's not, they've been in that formation 2 times. They ran the same play twice when they ran it in that formation, but it's not like, they're in that 7 times a game.
It's not the Lane Kiffin bubble screen.
Right. I mean, the Lane Kiffin, the blessed memory.
Right. Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
It would be easy to maybe recognize it, but not, see it right away. Is that a function of the coaches passing along stuff to the player as well, or is that just Darius Williams being super dialed in, or is it like both?
I think it's Darius Williams being dialed in. I think it was honestly, I think I give the credit to Jalen Ramsey.
Why is that?
Because Jalen, if you ask Darius Williams, he tells you Jalen Ramsey has made me a better player. Jalen Ramsey has made him, and then he also credits Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, right? I know they may not be on the team, but it's the thing of scared money don't make money, right? We've seen a guy like Marcus Peters is a guy who gambles, and he'll give up some, but man, he'll make some big ones. You're like, all right, I get it. Okay, cool. He made the big play. That's fine. But I think with Darius Williams, that confidence that he's gotten from those other guys is like, just go do it. Go make the play. He knows his opportunities are going to come. And I think the coaches can line you up, but that's just instincts. That's just understanding that, okay, why are they motioning DK Metcalf to this side, right? Like, why wouldn't they leave him on the side where Jalen Ramsey was? Okay, let me just go up and do that. Like, okay, yeah. He saw it, he read it, and he picked it off. I think it's a little bit of coaching as well, but I think more so it's the guys around him to give you that belief that, oh, yeah, I see it, just go get it.
Speaking of Jalen Ramsey and that entire secondary, how do you go about trying to slow down? I won't even go to stop Devontae Adams because he's just been otherworldly.
Is it different than D-Hop? Is it different than Metcalf? Like, what's going on there?
So the best route runners in the NFL, to me, it's Devontae, Keenan Allen. Like, these are different guys. I do want to see how do these guys, or Devontae specifically, how does he handle a guy like Jalen Ramsey? Because this is different. Jalen is such a physical guy that he loves the big physical DK Metcalf. Like, he likes the physical aspect of playing you at the line of scrimmage. People forget how big he is, Jalen Ramsey is. But now a guy who like Devontae, who watching him off the line is like poetry. It is beautiful because he knows where he wants to go and he'll set you up. That's the chemistry that Devontae and Aaron Rodgers has right now, to a point where Jalen can have great coverage. And then here comes Aaron Rodgers with that pinpoint back shoulder fade. And it's like, like Jalen Ramsey's there, but the ball's behind Devontae, thrown to the back pylon. Like, you can't defend that. That's too difficult. So it's going to be about how much that they're on the same side. Does Jalen travel with Devontae? I'm not necessarily scared of the Marquez Valdez-Scantlings and Alan Lazards. Now, Robert Tonyan may be a problem. Okay, the tight end, watched him throughout the season. So Tonyan could be a problem for the Rams because they utilize him a lot. It was a travesty that he wasn't voted to the Pro Bowl. He had over 10 plus touchdowns, and yet they gave it to Evan Ingram. I'm still mind boggled by that. Yes, the key matchup will be Ramsey on Adams, and it's how are they going to handle that? Do they keep a safety over the top maybe to help, or is it just going to be lock up? That's your man.
If they have Ramsey basically just shadowing Adams wherever he goes, lining up opposite, regardless of which side of the field, right. How much, if at all, does that mess with the principles of your defense? How much do other guys have to adjust for that?
Right.
Does it matter at all too that to the best of my understanding, Ramsey gets a fair amount of freedom anyway when he's on the field? No,
I think again. Sorry, Brian. That's a great point, Andy. Because
Kirk, it's been good having you. I hope your 2021 is better than 2020. Thank you.
No, I love you guys, by the way, but I think we got to remember too that I did see this happen before, though. we saw that happen in the game at Arizona. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the tight end was his name.
Long-haired dude.
From Boy Meets World, right? I forgot his name. Arnold. Yeah, there it is. Arnold.
Yes.
That's how I remember, because he sounded like one of the kids from Boy Meets World. But Arnold was the tight end, and this is where Jalen Ramsey was traveling with Hopkins, and then all of a sudden he's traveling. And so sometimes what that does, to your point though, Andy, is that it messes up the rules. It messes up the normal rules of what you play. Hey, when guys are on their normal sides, right? When he's on left, I'm on right. This is what we do. And if we get this route combination, hey, we'll pass that off. He keeps this. But when a guy is traveling, you're like, okay, but if I get this route, I'm on this side. So it's a little bit different. And that's where you had a tight end like in Arizona with Arnold. He was wide open. Literally nobody, because everybody's rules changed because Jalen was locked up on Hopkins. And then that's what the adjustment was by Brandon Staley. Like, nuh-uh, we're not doing that. Go play your side. Go do that. Now, when we get into man coverage, then you got them, and that's easier. So that's going to be the kind of the dilemma that they're going to be in. And this is kind of where we forget, too. Matt LaFleur, we know, was Sean McVay's first offensive coordinator with the Rams. So he knows his offense inside and out. He knows Jared Goff inside and out, too. But for the most part, he knows some of the holes within the Rams defense, you would think. But with Brandon Staley at the helm as a defensive coordinator, a lot different than when he was there. Totally different scheme of how they may utilize some of the guys up front. And so that may be the wash here in terms of philosophy and scheme.
Is the flip side of that, though, true, though, as well, where, like, the Rams can mess up their offense by trying to make sure that Ramsey can shadow Devontae Adams everywhere in the field, but the Packers can do the same thing by trying to make sure that Devontae isn't opposite, like you cut off half the field or whatever it might be. Does the same principle hold true on the other side?
It could be.
It's not a great point, Brian.
No.
It's a legitimate question.
No, it's a legitimate question. And for me, it's like when you ask me a question, Brian, my head starts spinning. I have all of these thoughts. And so I don't know if you guys watched last night, the national championship game between Alabama and
I forgot it was happening
in Georgia. I mean, so not Georgia, Alabama and Ohio State. Well, last night, Devontae Smith set a record for most catches in a game by halftime. And it was Steve Sarkisian, who was the offensive coordinator, who now be the head coach at the University of Texas. He schemed up so many different ways for Devontae Smith to get open. Yeah, it's easy to have the best guy, right? And just say, hey, we're going to find ways to, to get him open, to get him off Jalen Ramsey. Well, just remember that offensive coordinators have to find ways to keep this thing going. So that's funny, but you got it. But yeah, I mean, they're going to find some ways. I don't think it's a situation of them going away from Ramsey at all. I don't think that's not in Aaron Rodgers' nature too. Aaron Rodgers is a very confident individual, and he doesn't care who's out there. He's going to throw at you, elite corner or not. He is going to stay within the system, the scheme. That's just who he is. So, I mean, it's going to be part of the game plan. It's going to be part of the chess match. And that's what I'm always looking forward to see.
Go ahead, Andy. I was just saying, this is an interesting game for me for McVay. We sort of started on coaching, and maybe we'll finish it before we do predictions here. What is at stake for Sean McVay? Because, I don't want to say the shine is off the apple, but he is slightly diminished, just at least in terms of the idea that Sean McVay can turn anything into 35 points a game and stuff like that. And, he goes in and they have a disappointing season last year. Better, I think a little bit better than expected this year. Right. They beat a favored Seattle team under very difficult circumstances. I want to say are they 6.5 point underdogs this weekend?
Yeah, it's right about 7. Yeah.
It's a pretty big margin. Again, difficult circumstances. What is sort of at stake for Sean McVay? What can come of him winning this one too in Green Bay?
Wow, that's a good question, Ryan, because
Tied it up.
No, it really
You
is.
might have to go into overtime. How late can you stay?
I can go for a while. I think, no, honestly, it really is a good question because I don't know if Sean McVay's getting enough credit. I think this season has been not dedicated, but has been predicated on what? Defense. So it's more about Brandon Staley getting the credit because it wasn't like McVay's offense has taken them to the divisional round. This has been a team that's actually morphed into a defensive unit under Sean McVay in 2020. They're not scoring 30 points a game, right? So if the Rams win, is it going to be because of their offense? No, it's going to be because of what they do defensively. And so I would think that for me, Sean McVay will get the credit in that he was able to take a step back and realize who he is or what's the identity of his team. Whereas some people were just like, well, I'm an offensive guru and we're going to score points and then you turn the ball over 4 or 5 times. I think he gets that. Like, we can't do that. Let's be ball control. Let's let our defense allow. And I think he's actually playing for a low scoring game. That's what I saw in Seattle. His play calling tells me that I don't want this thing to be in the 30s. I want this thing to be in the low 20s and us having an opportunity in the fourth quarter to either take the lead or hold on to a lead.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that like Sean McVay has an ego, just like anybody in his position will have one.
Right.
And he's phenomenal with the media, which to some degree means he's very good at playing the media game.
Absolutely. He knows it well.
But I think Sean McVay is also pretty genuinely secure in who he is. Mm-hmm. And he's very secure in bringing in people that he knows could get more credit than him. I mean, the biggest example I think we saw was early on when they first hired him, bringing in Wade Phillips,
right,
who could have easily, if things didn't work out for McVay, that's a guy that slides in easily as his replacement. And McVay brought in somebody that knew as much or more than him, high profile, didn't care. And I think he's somebody that pretty genuinely doesn't care about the credit,
right,
in a way that all these guys care to some degree. It's their profession, it's their livelihood, it's a business. But I do think by these standards, he's pretty good at just focusing on what really matters in the end.
Yeah, I think he understands that with success, people want to take away from your success. They want to take your culture away. Brandon Staley, no one knew his name coming into the season. Now he's getting head coaching interviews, right? That's just how quickly things can change. Even Sean McVay's quarterbacks coach, Liam Cohen, is now the new offensive coordinator for Kentucky football, right? So people are still plucking away at Sean McVay just the way they plucked away Matt LaFleur, the way they plucked away Zach Taylor, right? They're trying to pluck away his defensive coordinator now. Like, this is what happens when you are successful and you build that winning culture. Everybody wants to know, how are you guys doing it? What are you guys doing it? How do you train? How do you coach? What are you doing during the week? How do you get the most?
He wasn't even part of the tree. He was just like, I know him.
Right.
I met Sean McVay once.
Yeah, that's how it works though, with Sean. And that's why I think, for me, I think they overachieved by winning on the road at Seattle. Like, whatever happens in Green Bay, fellas, to be honest, I think this team overachieved this year. No one had them, where they were. They made it to the playoffs. And I keep reminding people, had the NFL expanded to the 7 teams per conference playoff last season, the Rams would be playing the Packers last year. It'd have been the number 2 versus the number 7. They would have been a playoff team. And you're talking about in 4 years, he's got 4 playoff appearances, 2 division titles, and a Super Bowl appearance. Like, that's ridiculous. And so now he's been to the playoffs 3 years. Okay. He's gotten to the divisional round now twice and already made a Super Bowl. I mean, to say that his roster was really where he wanted it at this year, I can say that they overachieved with what they were able to do this year.
All right, so
I thought when we did our preseason stuff, I was like, I didn't think they'd be like well below 500, but I thought they could struggle. So you're right. They've been better than I thought they would be.
Yeah.
All right, so Kirk, recently I learned that you are a more honorable man than me and a more modest man than me because
no bar to clear.
low bar to clear, but nonetheless, more integrity than me. Ice Cube recently tweeted out a photo from a concert with him and Dr. Dre, and it was him sending his best wishes to Dre because Dre was recently hospitalized with an aneurysm. It seems like he's going to be okay.
Correct.
But in this photo, he is rocking a 52 jersey, which I saw. I immediately thought, oh my God, Cube. He's given a shout out to Kirk Morrison during his days with the Raiders. And I texted Kirk and asked him, am I crazy or is that Cube giving Kirk Morrison a shout out? And because Kirk Morrison, again, more honor than me, more integrity, I would say yes. But unfortunately, it's a Mac jersey, Mac being Khalil Mack. The NFL switched to Nike in 2012. All Raider jerseys from 2014 on, or more likely Mac jersey. A 52 Raiders Reebok is definitely me. LOL. You're so much more modest, Kirk, than I would have been. I would have absolutely been, oh, hell yeah, man. Cube's giving me a shout out. Of course he is. I'm Kirk Morrison. I was on his beloved Raiders.
Yeah. Now, I've met Cube on the sidelines of many pregame, so I know he's a big Raider fan. So I do know, and I can understand why you can make that connection, right? So that West Side connection. Look what I did there. But no, he that's. I wish that 52 jersey was mine, but it was Khalil Mack's, and so I get that a lot though. That's not you're not the first person who's asked me that. Like, oh man, I see a 52 jersey, man. I bet it's yours. I said, is it Nike or Reebok? He said, I think it's a Nike one. It ain't mine, brother. It ain't mine. Oh. I was in the Reebok days when Reebok was still the what is it? The outfitter,
the official provider,
official provider of the NFL, right? So,
but let's do I'm pulling up the numbers. Let's see here. So there have been a fair amount of 52s over the course of time. Let's figure out where you stack up, though. A lot of these people I've never heard of. So
I know one of them you heard of. I know for sure because he made one of the greatest plays in Super Bowl history, by the way, and he actually did it for the Rams.
Is this a 52 period or just with the Raiders?
Just with the Raiders.
Just with the Raiders.
Okay, just making
just Mike Jones. Mike Jones.
Yeah.
Mike Jones.
What we refer to in St. Louis as the tackle.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm looking at this list, and you are at worst the third. I'm going to say the third best. At worst, third best 52 in Oakland, LA, Las Vegas Raiders history. I mean, no disrespect. Khalil Mack is a very good football player.
Yeah, he's still the only person to make an All-Pro at two different positions, defensive end and linebackers. Never happened before. I think Aaron Donald could have been a guy that could win it at defensive lineman and defensive end, but still never happened. Khalil Mack, the only person to be an All-Pro first team at two different positions.
Yeah, and so and then because Mike Jones made a Super Bowl saving tackle.
Correct.
He can be above you, but like Mark Merrill, he can suck it.
Wow, Brian.
Gary Weaver, kiss it, man.
Do you, by the way,
J.R. Williamson?
Yeah. By the way,
go bleep yourself, JR. Larry Barnes. I'm not here for that.
As you were discarding all these different 52 became before or after Kirk, are you 100% sure who all of them are?
No idea.
No idea. Some of them, no.
I have no idea who. I don't know who Floyd Rice. No. Don't know. Jim Romano. I just think that Kirk Morrison was clearly a better player.
I agree with you, Brian. I do. I agree with you. Yeah.
And like when you see Mario Soletto, you just punch him right in the face, right? And like, can't believe you disgraced 52 in the way that you did.
Well, it's similar to like my college number 34. Like, no matter what, when I watch San Diego State, I always want to know who's wearing my number. Like, and I hope
you don't want it to be some like
you don't want it to be like the kicker, right? or somebody putting in work. You know what I mean? Like, all right, yeah, I like that.
You don't want it to be like by the way, Groves.
Yeah, maybe Mark Merrill. Mark Merrill doesn't necessarily need to suck it. I guess he isn't that. He's probably a good guy.
That was a little
much.
much.
The NFL. It was a little harsh, but it was funny.
It was funny, but I'm just saying it was a little much.
The guy made the NFL. I mean, it's pretty impressive. All right. Who wins this weekend?
Wow. Honestly, it's a tough one. I think I'm really torn. I really am, fellas, because I think that the Rams really do have a legitimate shot of going on the road and winning. I know what the blueprint looks like. I saw it last year, covering the NFL and covering that NFC Championship game last year in San Francisco. I saw them play ball control, ran the football, kept Aaron Rodgers on that sideline, and it was a really physical football game. And I'd never seen a team just get dominated like that on the ground. Have the Packers overcome that? Have they gotten better defensively? I think they've done it enough to where it's not going to be this big offensive explosion. I think it'll be a lot closer than, obviously, people are saying it's a 7-point favorite. I think the Rams just may miss out by a little bit. This is a field goal game coming down the stretch. I just think that they got one more play left in them than I think the Rams, because they're going to hold on. Like, the defense is going to play well, I think, but I think they may make one more play than I think where the Rams can. And the weather will be an issue. It'll be 28 degrees. It is going to be cold. For some California guys, man, it was 70 plus today in Los Angeles.
It's like 80 degrees when the day they travel.
Yeah. So trust me, when I say it's a real thing, I've actually played at 4 degrees at Lambeau. Yes. Yeah, it was 4 degrees. You can look it up. I think this was in 2007. The coldest game I know that I've played in. And I'll tell you this, I don't cry Uncle much, but that was yeah.
You know who didn't play in 4 degrees in Lambeau Field? Lyndon King. That's right. Lyndon King, who wore 52 for 3 years for the Oakland Raiders. Really, that's not 4 is not a temperature. It's not. That's not. If the Rams win, though, does the sort of statistical profile kind of look like what it did last week, where Cam Akers has 170 total yards and Goff is around 200, 250 or something like that. And it is that sort of ball. The defense scores a touchdown. Does it look similar?
Yeah. You're going to need some defensive scores. You're going to need some defensive turnovers. You're going to have to get the ball back a couple of times, but we know Aaron Rodgers doesn't turn the ball over. So you getting an interception on Aaron Rodgers, that just doesn't happen. So you're going to need a couple fumbles. I thought it was like what, like I said, going back to what the college football guys were saying, Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler, like a field goal at times is better than giving up a touchdown, right? It's just, you want to break the scoring. So if the Rams are giving up threes and getting punts, that's great for them to keep it close. That's what I'm saying. That's what McVay should be preaching. We can beat this team, fellas, but it's about getting to the fourth quarter with it being within a score, and that's where the Rams can really take care, because that's when the defense turns it on. If they start messing up early, they're just not a team that's built to play from behind. That's just not who they are this year.
All right, before we let you go, I just want to let people see a real man rocking a 52. Look at this right here.
That's the real one right here.
Returning
Is that Lyndon King?
Oh, that ain't Lyndon. That's me, brother.
No, that is Kirk Morrison. Returning an interception against the Browns. Got an alternate angle right here, signed by Kirk Morrison.
You see the Reebok, though. You see the Reebok above the number 52 on the shoulder, though. See that Reebok?
Yeah.
I had Nike shoes, though. Actually, you know what? Go back to that picture, because I do want to shout out too, though, right? If you notice what cleats I'm wearing, can you guess the cleats that I'm wearing in that photo?
Nike somethings.
They look like Nikes.
Yeah, the Kobe's Hirachis 2K4s.
Ooh.
Kobe Hirachi. So yeah, I was a big Mamba guy too, right? I wanted to wear the Kobe, so I got some Kobe's and I wore them that year.
They put I didn't know you could do that, where you could either Kobe shoes and they just glue cleats on the bottom. How does that work?
Yeah, so they started making similar to excuse me, what they're doing now with all these Jordan brand cleats, right? They start making cleats with what they look like as regular shoes. And so this was the first year I had saw a pair. I literally got on the phone with Nike, a couple people. I had to pull some strings, and I was at an event with one of the high Nike execs. And I said, I would love to wear the Kobe 2K4 Hirachis. And he's like, what is that? He had no idea. Like, he was like, okay, you gotta let me know.
Sure, Mr. King, whatever you need.
I wish it was, but he was like, no, you know what? He's like, yeah, no. He said, I didn't know I knew we were doing something in football. I didn't know to what extent, because he was in he's in the other side. He's in the business side of it. He's not necessarily with the product, but he was like, sure, give me a call on Monday. And I'll kid you not, I gave him a call that Monday, and there was boxes being sent to the facility of all of these Kobe cleats. And that was 2007. And that's when I had my career high 4 interceptions. I was defensive player of the month, the month of September, because I had like 3 interceptions in the first 3 games. Like, it was crazy. That what
You
those
still have any of those?
Oh, I have them all.
Oh, that's awesome.
I still got brand new pairs too.
Good question. Would you wear the Montrezl Harrell furry shoes that he wore the other day?
I'm not wearing those, man.
I'll tell
I
you
actually did see them though.
I liked them. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm not a sneaker guy. Like it would speak to why I really loved them. I thought they were great.
They're kind of fun.
But either way, I'll tell you who didn't get those custom Kobe Hirachis.
Who's that?
Philip Weaver. They wouldn't have done that for him.
Nope. That guy was garbage.
Y'all really going down all the names.
You know who that is?
Yeah. Well, like Philip Wheeler. Yeah, he actually played for Indianapolis, and he came over. So there's a couple guys who I
was actually intentionally trying to find guys that you wouldn't have overlapped with, like dudes from like 1972.
Yeah. See now. See,
I wouldn't stumble upon a friend of yours or something.
Well, you remember like Philip Villiano was number like 41. So you remember that's when like they didn't care about what numbers you were back in the day.
Right.
So that's when you had like Fred Biletnikoff wearing number 25 at wide receiver.
It is. I will say I did it one time, and even just in high school, returning an interception for a touchdown is like the coolest feeling ever.
It is.
It's really cool.
It is. I've only done it once, and it was in college. And the only bad part about that was I did it at Wyoming, Laramie, Wyoming. It is the only touchdown that I said I returned by interception, and I watched the film the next day, and every one of my teammates literally put a finger in the air like, good job, and ran to the sideline. Nobody celebrated with me at all. So I had an interception return for a touchdown. We sealed the game, and no one congratulated me. And so I get to the sideline. I'm like, yo, why nobody congratulate me? Everybody has oxygen tanks. So if you guys have never been to Laramie, Wyoming, it is 7,200 feet above sea level. They were like, and I literally had guys, I'm talking about like my best of friends said, look, I know that's a great career achievement. I love you, buddy. But hey, man, hey, I'm not running down there.
I will see you when you get back here.
I mean, literally. If the tape the next day was because I'm like, man, nobody want to celebrate. He's like, man, brother, I'm trying to get, and it literally all had oxygen machines that day. And the next day, like we watched it. I mean, I saw literally guys, put a foot in the ground and head straight to the sideline. They were done. Like they didn't want to be on the field any longer. So yeah, that's why I always know that when you play against like Denver, like altitude sickness is real.
Awesome.
That is a great story.
It's a real thing.
That is really funny. Dude, it is always fun catching up with you, man.
Absolutely, man. Anytime, fellas. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'll give you a score, man. I think it's going to be 27-21. I think Packers get the Rams 27-21. Maybe 24. We'll see. I don't know how Matt Gay is going to kick in the cold as well. I just think that is going to be a lot closer game than people give him credit for. It's just hard. They got the MVP on their side and Aaron Rodgers. It's going to be tough. If the Rams win this one, like you said, where do we put Sean McVay? And I think it solidifies him as, one of the game's best coaches, regardless. Because this year, in a COVID year, what they've had to deal with, if they win this one, I mean, come on, man.
that is a signature win.
I would be a team trying to trade for Sean McVay as my coach. Like if I have an opening, like if the Rams, do you want 3 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks,
and you got to take Goff's contract.
And you got to take Goff. Come on, man. Get out of here.
All right. So tomorrow night we're going to go back to wrestling. Bill Hanstock, who we were going to have on last week before the world started to burn down, is going to join us tomorrow. That'll be a really fun show. Thursday, little NFL, little NBA, little music and pop culture with Matt Money Smith, and Friday back to basketball with Aaron Larsoul. Great week to finish things off. I got some good stuff. Looking forward to next week as well. Thank you again to Kirk Morrison, and we will see everybody tomorrow.
Dank you, Nederland.